We are talking now about an issue that has been a bit thorny in a lot of football fans' view or eyes and everything, especially in the last 2 weeks. The matter between Kaizer Chiefs, the PSL, and the clubs that they were supposed to play, two clubs that they were supposed to play matches that they missed. And we now know that the PSL considers them having been missed games. And you'll remember Kaizer Chiefs reported initially that they have recorded 31 cases of COVID-19 at their headquarters in Naturena. They had to close down for a couple of days. Players and a lot of staff went into quarantine. That number increased to 36 eventually. And Kaizer Chiefs saying we do not have a team that can play any matches. They missed the match against Cape Town City. They then missed the game against Golden Arrows the following week. They only came back against Sekhukhune United last week. And yesterday, the PSL finally responded to the request to have their matches in December postponed. And the PSL, we now know, has declined that request by Kaizer Chiefs. I'm joined by Marc Strydom right now, the senior football writer at Times Live. Marc, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. As I said, the genesis of this entire matter is COVID-19. Chiefs had a lot of people test positive at their headquarters. Probably the weirdest 3 weeks in South African football. I don't think we've ever had such a situation before.
It was some of the weirdest 3 weeks. I mean, when the whole league shut down, that's probably the weirdest 3 weeks we've ever had. Last year around the initial hard lockdown and the return to football, that was quite weird. Certainly COVID-19 has again produced a situation that is quite weird, yes. Look, it's something we're seeing internationally as well. We're seeing with Omicron, with the rise of fourth and fifth waves in Europe, that clubs there are also battling to put together teams. In Europe, they seem to have been more lenient somehow, and they've allowed postponements of matches, and it's an issue that's been hugely discussed, and you know, it would be nice to have a few more details from the league and from Kaizer Chiefs, so we could know exactly why the decision was made, and if Kaizer Chiefs could have given us a bit more in terms of, you know, they let us know they had 36 staff members missing, but they never told us exactly how many of their reserve squad, exactly how many of their senior squad were out. They basically said everyone had to isolate. So if that's the case, okay. But I mean, surely I don't know what you could juggle and how many you had available. They never told us how many players exactly they had available. And if you see what's happened with SuperSport United, who played this weekend, past weekend, with 5 players on their bench, you know, another club is. I don't know if that's right. That clubs should be forced to play fixtures, league fixtures, when they've basically got a decimated squad. I mean, it affects the integrity of the league at some level. But these are difficult times, and who knows what the right thing is always to do. But when you see that SuperSport had to go through that, you just wonder, Kaizer Chiefs could have been a little more forthcoming on telling us exactly the breakdown of those 36 staff members, or more. I think there might have been more test positive subsequently, because I think they have 200-odd staff members at Naturena. So if they could have told us exactly how many players they were missing, we could have had a better idea of and maybe more sympathy for their cause.
Yeah, but now the awkward thing, I suppose, for the PSL, Marc, has been that little excerpt, if I can put it like that, in a circular that went around all the clubs, all 32 clubs of professional football in South Africa, to say COVID-19 cannot be regarded as extraordinary circumstances, something like that, to postpone a match. And it now put the league in an awkward position when it comes to this matter of Kaizer Chiefs, because there were cases with Cape Umoya and all of that. But can Kaizer Chiefs argue the cases you've mentioned when it comes to European football, I mean, less staff and players have tested positive in some of the clubs in Europe, and they've had their matches postponed. Can they cite that, or does that circular that the PSL sent to the clubs tie them down to, we have to decline that request?
Yeah, Benjamin, you raise interesting questions there. You spoke obviously at the beginning about the genesis. That is what the genesis of this matter has been, is that that circular came from the Exco, as I understand it, from the Executive Committee. I can understand the reasoning, the thinking behind the Exco, which is that this is COVID-19. There are going to be a lot of cases sometimes at clubs. I don't know if they quite anticipated 36 cases at one club, and it going quite to that extent. But I think their thinking was, we can't have the league breaking down, and we can't have clubs coming to us for postponements every time there's COVID-19. But I think the problem is that they went to quite an extreme with that circular, saying that COVID-19 cannot be used as a reason for postponements. Because I think in a pandemic you need some flexibility. You need to allow yourself some flexibility in terms of the decisions you're going to make. I think I wonder, and the next step now is going to be to find out whether Kaizer Chiefs are going to take this forward and appeal it. Are they going to go to the courts? And I think you make a good point in terms of that isn't actually a rule that was put into the NSL handbook. That is a circular from the Exco. How binding is it is one of the questions. Another question is, does safety and does do the rules of the country in terms of the pandemic, in terms of people having to go to isolate, in terms of following the health protocols, does that not override a circular in terms of the laws of the country? And if that went to the courts, would Chiefs have a strong case? And that's going to be the interesting thing. The interesting next development in this case is going to be, are Kaizer Chiefs going to take that route? Yeah. Would they take? I would wonder if they aren't even taking some, and I obviously don't know this. I'm speculating if they're taking some legal advice already about whether to take it further.
And could it happen, Mark? Because Chiefs are going to lose points if the PSL has its way around the matter. They will have 2 more games on their matches played. The points will stay the same. In fact, their goal difference, if history is anything to go by, will go down by 6 points. They will lose both matches by 6 points, by 3 goals, I beg your pardon. So can they go to the courts, and could we see yet another case that goes all the way to FIFA? If they don't get any joy there, could it go all the way to Switzerland, to the Court of Arbitration for Sport?
Of course, theoretically it could. I think, yeah, that is the next step that we have to wait and see if Chiefs will pursue that avenue. In the interest of football, I think all of us really hope it doesn't happen. Not in terms of Kaizer Chiefs. you can see Kaizer Chiefs' standpoint, but another court matter in the league, dragging the league through the courts again, which I don't think is what Kaizer Chiefs would do, but it's just every single season there seems to be a serious court matter that affects the league. But then this also does, if Chiefs have a legal status to go to the courts, you also can't blame them for it. and then it comes back to the handling of it by the league. Why did it take the length of time that it took? It's now, I think, close to 3 weeks since Chiefs first asked for those postponements. Why did it take, I think, more than 5 Exco meetings to come to a decision? Why not 1 Exco meeting? Why could a decision not be made? Why was the messaging so unclear at the time of the Cape Town City match, at the time of the Golden Arrows match, that the league couldn't inform the public on whether those matches were postponed or not? So, yeah, I think Chiefs would have an argument. I don't think anyone wants to see it go to the courts, but it may well, yeah.
the fact that the league doesn't have a prosecutor, does it have anything to do with the delayed response from the league? We know Nandebeka resigned from his post a few weeks ago also. Does it have any bearing to how the PSL, perhaps they could have been buying time to get their house in order themselves? Because to charge Kaizer Chiefs with anything, they'd have to have a prosecutor.
I don't think it has a standing on how long this particular process took. Because if you read the statement, the initial decision of the league was to, at an executive level, was to reject Kaizer Chiefs' initial request for postponement of their matches in December. That was then referred by Chiefs for review to the Exco. So the Exco had to make that decision. The fact that there's no prosecutor, the Exco still could make that decision. They didn't need a prosecutor to make that decision. So now, of course, you refer the matter to the prosecutor, who then has to charge Chiefs, and it's not an automatic walkover. You have to go through the DC process, and then the 3 points get awarded, the 3-0 win, as you say. So no, I don't think the fact that that Nandebeka's contract had ended and hadn't been renewed, which the PSL knew about, by the way, last month. But of course, I think, look, finding a new prosecutor can't be an easy process. But I don't think it affected this process. What it affects is going forward in terms of the DC process. And there's not just this, there's a whole lot of DC processes that are stacking up. So of course it's a priority, and I'm sure the PSL are aware of it, that they need to get a prosecutor quite soon.
Okay. Marc Strydom, thank you so much for your time this morning. Well, it's a matter that we're going to have to keep our eye on going into the turn of the year. I certainly hope that it does not go on and on up until the end of the season, and we again see the saga that happened at the beginning of the season with Royal AM and all of that. So hopefully it gets resolved in the quickest of times. That's Marc Strydom, Times Live senior football writer, talking to us about the Kaizer Chiefs saga with the PSL in there.